All right, guys, we're jumping back to some hobby here, balancing out the tactics and the gameplay. But a question to set this up before I get your feedback here, your motivation, because I'm going to soon be staring down a massive pile of plastic and I need to get motivated. So it's interesting over the past, what do you want to say, 8 to 10 years, how board gaming, miniature board gaming, and miniature wargaming, those lines are becoming extremely blended. If we look at something, Zombicide, piles and piles of miniatures on there. It's a board game. If we look at something like Conan, the board game, one of my favorite board games out there, tons and tons of miniatures, but if I strip away the miniatures and just look at the rule set, it's essentially a skirmish war game. It's a one versus many, essentially a skirmish war game. And gone are the days where you would get some miniatures that would represent the primary characters in the game, then the rest is cards and tokens. Certainly those games exist. But more and more, lots and lots of miniatures before we even get into the expansions. Now, I don't want to put any pressure on anybody. I don't want to misstep or misspeak here, but my understanding of wargaming and the culture that brought me into it was you don't play unpainted. Your miniatures are painted. Miniature wargaming, what we're trying to do here is literally step out of space and time and set something up with the right music, with the 2 painted armies, or maybe 3 or 4, and crafted terrain on there. We're trying to create a movie set simulation. We're trying to answer the question, this is what happened in history, whether it was real or made up. Now we're living that on the table. So I would never play unpainted. That said, sidebar, side note, you could do tabletop. Usually my attack strategy will be 3 or 4 colors, some highlights, a wash, some simple basing. Get the army tabletop so you can start winning and rolling the dice. And then over time, go back and now add squad markings, maybe drill out the barrels, maybe work on the details on the basing. Slowly bring your army up. In many ways, it's never even fully complete. But I do believe getting painted down on the table. So now here we are playing board games, and, well, a lot of these board games are like miniature games on there. Do you play with unpainted miniatures? And I'm going to use Zombicide as an example because it's a great illustration of the game. And as of this podcast, we're about, in theory, 2 or 3 weeks out from Zombicide Invader shipping for the Kickstarter. So that means I'm comfortably anywhere from maybe a month to a month and a half out starting July with delivery, which is good. Normally I'm very anxious to get my hands on whatever the Kickstarter is, but I've got to clear up some backlog. And I have to make a little more progress through Pathfinder 2nd Edition before I can even begin to try to tackle Zombicide Invader. But in looking at this and getting them painted on the table, there is a huge difference in painted versus unpainted, especially if it's a board game, especially if it's a mass miniature game. Zombicide Invader, as of now, Zombicide Black Plague, is one of the most highly played games in my gaming group, solo from my perspective on there with my friends. I have a copy that has been, I won't say destroyed, but it has been chewed up and played. It has logged tons and tons of hours. It's painted 3 colors, a wash, some highlights, some blood effects on there, a solid tabletop. And for a long time we played unpainted, but wow, even just painted base colors really makes such a huge difference, not only in terms of presentation, but in terms of the zombie horde. So I wanted to push that out there. And Blackstone Fortress, yes, the past couple of podcasts, I totally violated all these rules. And Fritz was playing unpainted because something like Blackstone Fortress, we couldn't wait. But now we're at a pause on there, waiting for Trader Guard and a couple of the other expansions. I've got Titanicus to keep me busy for a little bit. And that's one of the other things that I want to clear on my paint bench right now. I want to get Blackstone Fortress up and running, fully painted, ready to go. From the board gaming perspective, do you paint your miniatures? And twofold in the comments. Obviously, if you're a wargamer or an experienced hobbyist miniature painter, it's not that far of a stretch. Do you paint your miniatures. If you've been into the board game hobby for a while, and by that I mean like you're just like, I'm in a really hardcore, dedicated board game, miniature game player, do you paint your own miniatures? And on what level do you think where that goes and pushes that out?